So the average frost date is just that. It's a historical average of all the frost dates in your area, collected by NOAA, and those are analyzed over a 15 to 20 year period to determine what the first frost date should be in that area. Now, since they're going to go for the first frost date, they're not going to get the center average. They're going to try to pull it closer to the first of when it might be. It could be a little earlier, it could be a little later. The way they do the calculation on these, their statistics show that they're about 30% off on the frost date. So it could be a few days before the date they show, or it could be several days after it, the frost date they show. So that frost date is in your area, determined by a NOAA weather recording station, and they're not everywhere, so it's just going to be a generalized area. If you were looking at ours, our nearest recorder for these is going to be about 25 miles away from us. It's going to be north, it's going to be in a lower lying area. So that means that our frost date could be a little later than what the average shows. And so far this year it is. This is the 19th of October. Our average frost date shows it should be around the 14th or 15th. When I go back on the history of this, and you can do that, and I'll show you where and give you a link to it, hopefully in the description, where you can go and find your average frost date from year to year, what that first frost date actually was. Determine your own frost date. But again, it's going to be based on NOAA's weather stations. A lot of the plants that are warm weather lovers, like tomatoes, peppers, your summer squashes, sweet potatoes, which is a warm weather lover, are not going to survive that first even light frost. And a light frost is 32 to 29 degrees. Now, another thing about frost is it will hit the low-lying areas first. That's because that cold air is going to flow downhill and get those lower lying areas first. So if you're in a bottom close to a creek or something and you've got hills around you, you're going to be more susceptible to that first frost than anyone else. If you're sitting on a hill, it's possible you'll miss that first frost, and maybe that first frost date will even be extended a few days until if you're living up on a hill. Now, I'm living up on a ridge, so the frost does come a little later, usually here. And if you live on a higher area, that is a blessing there, for gets you a few more days of growing time. Now, some of the plants, a light frost is not going to harm them, at least due to a major extent that they're going to not produce fruit or vegetables in it. Your carrots, your cauliflower, broccoli, spinach, kales, a lot of the greens will survive a light frost. A medium frost is going to be about 25 to 28 degrees. When you get down to the medium frost, some of those are going to fall off. Some of the greens will fall off. Broccoli, carrots, things like that are still going to be okay, and even down to a freeze. And then anything that's below 24 degrees is going to be a hard freeze. And there's a lot of things that will not survive a hard freeze. Some of those vegetables will be fine and they'll survive. It depends on the root system, if they've got water, because water, moist soil, will hold temperature better than dry soil. So if you're having a frost date, you have a frost warning coming up in your area, water the plants you want to survive. Now, another thing you might do to some of your plants is mulch around them. Pull some straw, pull some mulch, pull some compost around those. Make sure everything is moist. That will help. But the cold weather crops will survive that light frost, medium frost, and even some of the harder freezes. And I have had spinach and some of the greens and kale and broccoli survive all the way up to the middle of December. Now, the warm weather plants, it's really not going to help. You might cover those if it's just 1 or 2 nights. There's going to be a light frost. You might get a few more days out of those. Just make sure you uncover them when that sun comes up. Of course, if you had potted plants, you can bring those inside. A good way to extend your growing season, even in spite of frost dates, will be a high tunnel or a greenhouse, of course. But not everybody has those. Try to get as much grow time as you can out of your garden. That's always a good thing. You just have to keep an eye out. You have to plan. It's better to be prepared for an earlier frost than it is a later frost. Okay, you can't bet on that later frost going to come. We have had as late as middle of November before we've had our first frost here, but that is not always the case, and it's not even the normal case. We just take it as a blessing and go on. But we plan for that October 14th, 15th frost date when we're planting our fall vegetables.